stories that we tell ourselves have great powers over our lives. They create our identity, influence decisions we make, and determine the way we perceive the world. Everyone has a mental narrative going on inside his head, determining what he thinks of himself, what he is capable of doing, and what he can do. These stories are usually conditioned through past experiences, societal influence, and other people's words. However, what most people fail to realize is that these stories are not set in stone. They can be rewritten, and in doing so, we can completely transform the trajectory of our lives. From an early age, people absorb beliefs from their environment. A child constantly hearing positive words may grow up believing she or he can and is confident. Another, however, is being constantly criticized, and in such a manner may internalize a story of inadequacy. These beliefs, whether empowering or limiting, form the basis for the building blocks of future experiences. When one repeats to himself or herself over and over that one is not good at something, they reinforce this belief with each failure or setback. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, not because they are innately incapable, but because their mind prevents them from seeing possibilities beyond their current limitations. Stories make meaning, and meaning makes emotions. If the same event appears as a failure to one, it may bring defeat, whereas the same to another person will be a lesson. The difference is in interpretation, the story he tells himself. For instance, a job rejection can be taken as a total loss or a stepping stone to a better opportunity. The one who believes they are unlucky or not talented enough will go spiraling into self-doubt, while the one who sees the experience as feedback for growth will move on with renewed determination. One of the greatest challenges is that people often accept their stories as absolute truth. They rarely take the time to ask themselves if their story is helping or hurting them. A person who continually fails in relationships may think they are unlovable, when in fact they might simply need to do things differently or work on some patterns. A person struggling financially may think they are bad with money, which keeps them from taking steps to get out of that place. The moment an individual realizes that their story is just one version of reality and not the only possible truth, they gain the power to shift their mindset and rewrite their future. Awareness is the first step in changing a story. Recognizing the stories we have been telling ourselves, especially those that hold us back, is crucial. It requires self-reflection and honest evaluation of the beliefs that shape our daily actions. Many times such stories are found in past lives that no longer define us. Just because somebody failed at one point in life does not mean they will continue to fail at everything else in life. A person who used to be shy or insecure should not mean a person cannot ever become confident or resilient. Once people become aware of the stories they have adopted, they can start challenging and replacing them with empowering ones. Most people live their lives without realizing the stories they tell themselves, yet these stories form their reality. One of the first steps toward personal transformation is identifying limiting stories. These stories often come from past experiences, childhood conditioning, or negative self-perceptions that have been reinforced over time. They become intangible barriers, dictating to a person what they think they can or cannot do. Limiting narratives must be acknowledged for the reason that, until such a time when these are made aware, they govern thoughts, behaviors, and outcomes. Limiting stories may assume many different shapes. For example, people tell themselves they're not intelligent enough, while others tell themselves they're not deserving of success or happiness. These beliefs are not based on objective truth, but rather on interpretations of past events. For example, a student who struggled with math in school may develop the belief that they are simply bad at numbers, leading them to avoid careers or opportunities that require analytical thinking. Similarly, a person who has faced numerous heartbreaks may tend to believe they are bad luck in love, which would make them destroy potential relationships or even shun vulnerability and emotions. Most of these limiting beliefs are learned through external sources. Parents, teachers, friends, and society in general can affect how people see themselves. A child who receives constant criticism develops the notion that he or she is not good enough. A child who grew up in a poor household may believe that money is always scarce and hard to earn. Such beliefs become deeply ingrained and influence decision-making in profound ways. A person who believes they are destined to be poor may never take financial risks or pursue higher-paying opportunities, even when they have the capability to do so. The danger of limiting stories is that they become self-fulfilling prophecies. When a person believes they are incapable, they act in ways that reinforce that belief. Someone who thinks they are not good at public speaking may avoid opportunities to practice, reinforcing their fear and lack of confidence. Another individual who believes they are unworthy of love may unconsciously push people away, further validating their own story. These stories create cycles of behavior that keep people stuck, often without them even realizing it. Awareness of this happens first with such limitations. Self-reflection, deep and truthful to oneself, needs honesty. Forging critical questions helps one gain that awareness. What are my decision-making beliefs? Were these beliefs planted through someone? How did the system work about creating these beliefs? Are they based on truths, or because the past seems that much greater by giving overvalue to an idea? To unscramble these question lines and be able to gain insight will set people's subconscious scripts rolling, which once dominated their existence. Once the limiting stories are discovered, it's time to overcome them. Having struggled with something in the past does not determine that a person will not succeed in the future. Skills can be learned, perspectives can be shifted, and new opportunities can be created. The key is recognizing that the story itself is not reality, but rather a belief that can be rewritten. The moment an individual realizes this, they open the door to growth, transformation, and new possibilities. The stories people tell themselves have a profound impact on their lives. These internal narratives influence emotions, shape decisions, and ultimately determine the quality of a person's experiences. Whether someone perceives themselves as capable or inadequate, successful or a failure, loved or unworthy, these perceptions are not just thoughts, they become the forces that guide their actions. The more people repeatedly affirm a belief about themselves, the more their brain starts to look for evidence to support that belief, thereby reinforcing it even further. That is why the story a person tells themselves has such a strong influence on their reality. Take two people facing the same adversity, being unemployed. One of them will be telling themselves, I'm a failure. I always make things worse. I will never find another good job. Such a narrative would leave him or her hopeless, insecure, and inactive. In believing they're bound to fail, they stop applying for jobs, refuse to network, and settle for positions that are below their capacity. Another person in the same situation might tell themselves, this is just a temporary setback. I have skills, and I will find something even better. With this empowering story, they have the motivation to update their resume, contact their personal networks, and remain job-seeking active. The external situation is the same, but the internal story changes everything. This pattern occurs in every area of life. The constant telling of self that one is bad at relationships may result in not opening oneself to others. This, of course, brings about shallow or failed connections. A person believing they are not smart enough will also not attempt some new things in life and prevent themselves from learning and growing. The way one interprets an event will dictate their emotional state and behavior. A rejection can be viewed as proof of inadequacy or as an opportunity to grow. A financial setback can be viewed as a crisis or as a lesson in better money management. The meaning assigned to experiences shapes the emotions they generate, which in turn affects how people respond. The challenge is that many people do not question their stories. They assume that because they have always believed something, it must be true. Just because a person has held a certain belief for years does not mean it is based on reality. Often, these stories are built on past experiences, societal influences, or comments from others that were never objectively analyzed. A single failure in childhood does not mean that the person is incapable of success. But if he or she internalizes that experience as a core belief, it can affect them for life. The first step towards change happens when one starts recognizing the impact of their internal story. The next step is to consciously reshape that into one which empowers and does not limit. Intentional thinking, active reframing, of past experiences and focusing on possibilities rather than obstacles is all it takes in reshaping the life. Whenever a person takes control of their narrative, they take control of their emotions, decisions, and thereby destiny. Writing a new story about your life is one of the most powerful actions you can take to change your life. How you see yourself, your strengths, and your potential is based on the story you repeat to yourself. If that story is full of self-doubt, fear, and limitation, it will not help you go forward. But if you decide consciously to rewrite your story with empowerment, confidence, and possibility, then you can liberate yourself from old patterns and step into new reality. What it takes to make this transition is to shake off the existing negative narratives with new empowering beliefs. To rewrite your story begins with becoming conscious of the limitations that have been running in your mind. Pay attention to what you think when things don't go so well. Do you tell yourself that you're not good enough? That success is for others but not for you? These thoughts feel automatic, but they're not facts. They're just interpretations. Once you identify the limiting narratives that play out in your mind, you can begin to dismantle them. One powerful challenge to negative stories is asking, is this belief absolutely true? People often discover when examining limiting beliefs that these stories really are based upon past experiences or fears and not reality. It doesn't necessarily mean that the first time you tried something, it didn't work out. Thus, it cannot be a promise that you'll never get it right. And the moment you start questioning these old narratives, they begin to lose their power over you. After challenging the old story, the next step is to replace it with a new, empowering one. Instead of saying, I am not good at this, change it to, I am learning and improving every day. Instead of saying, I always fail, say, every setback is a lesson that makes me stronger. This shift in perspective is not about ignoring reality, but about choosing a more constructive way of interpreting experiences. The words you choose to describe yourself and your situation matter because they shape your emotions and actions. Rewrite your story. You must learn to write your story around your strength instead of what you lack. Everyone has unique talents, abilities, and qualities that could give value. Once you shift the focus from lack to what you have, you begin to find new things. Instead of dwelling over failure, look at previous successes, no matter how small. Celebrate progress because growth is always a process. Another key part of rewriting your story is taking action based on that new narrative. If you tell yourself you are confident but are still avoiding challenges, that new story is not going to feel real. Action reinforces belief. Begin to stretch out from that comfort zone in tiny ways. If you believe you are able, act like it. If you believe that you deserve to succeed, you must start behaving as if it's true. Through time, such behavior will entrench a new story into your life and make impossible look feasible. How you feel about an experience or the challenges facing you and those that are opened up for you dictates the type of stories that come out from it. Emotions fuel one to either amplify limiting beliefs or empower a life of rewriting into a positive, constructive story. Thus, if an emotion is accompanied by negativity tied to fear and self-doubt or associated with past tragedies, it justifies the existing disempowered story. But when emotions are positive, based on confidence, hope, and resilience, they may help us look at things differently and create a new, empowering story that can lead to success and fulfillment. Most people are not aware of how much emotions influence their inner dialogue. For instance, if a person has been rejected multiple times, they may create a story that they are not good enough or unlovable. Each time they encounter a new situation that requires vulnerability, be it in relationships, career opportunities, or personal growth, the negative emotions of past experiences surface. These emotions trigger automatic thoughts like, I'll just fail again, or it's not worth trying. Over time, these thoughts solidify into beliefs, and the person unknowingly starts living out the story they fear the most. To break free from this cycle, it is essential to recognize the emotional patterns connected to limiting stories. One way to do this is by identifying emotional triggers. Be aware of the stories you are telling yourself when you experience fear, anxiety, or frustration. Ask yourself what story you are telling yourself right now. So simple, it can bring powerful awareness to the fact that emotions are a story and not reality. Emotions are responses to past experiences. With awareness of the story that is creating a negative emotional reaction, you can begin to work to change it. Another way to shift your emotions is by intentionally generating positive emotions. For instance, appreciation is perhaps the most potent method of balancing your negative feelings. When you give attention to all that you value in life, your brain transitions from thinking based on deficiency to thinking based on abundance. You then find an emotional ground on which to establish a much more empowering narrative. Instead of thinking, I always fail, you might begin to say, I have overcome challenges before, and I can do it again.